I walked into the server room and immediately knew something was wrong. Not because of any alarm or system failure, but because of the smell. Citrus. And some cheap indie music playing over the intercom. The server room's supposed to smell like ozone, dust, and stress. Not like a Bath and Body Works. My name's Ryan Geller. I'm 46 years old. I live in Kansas City. Been with VectorLink since the dial-up days, back when a modem handshake sounded like a fax machine dying. I'm the guy they used to call when everything broke. Racks fried, firmware bricked. Some genius spilled Red Bull into the switch stack. I'd fix it with a patch, a zip tie, and maybe an old USB stick I've had since the Bush administration. But lately, I've been the last guy in the room. Or not in the room at all. Quick note, before we dive deeper, tell us which country you're watching from. The new VP of Ops, Brandon Whitaker, showed up in January. 34, MBA from somewhere expensive, leather loafers, constant smirk. Also, conveniently, the CEO's son. The guy's idea of DevOps is turning everything into a Slack channel with a hashtag. Every meeting is a vibe alignment. I stopped correcting him after the third time he called DNS that digital name stuff. Then came Kayla, his girlfriend. Brought her in as a digital brand therapist, which apparently meant hovering around IT like she was cleansing a haunted house. She had no badge, no credentials, no clue. But she had ideas. Oh, she had a lot of ideas. One day, I came back from lunch and found my whiteboard erased. My disaster recovery map, gone. Replaced with big bubbly letters. Server vibes, lit. I just stood there. Couldn't even speak. Kayla looked up from her phone like I'd interrupted a ritual. Said something about needing the space for visualizing tech energy. Then she asked me if RAID was that gaming thing. After that, I knew. They weren't just clueless, they were cleaning house. Rebranding IT like it was a lifestyle brand. And I didn't fit the aesthetic. Brandon started pushing me off calls, skipping over me in briefings. Said my energy wasn't collaborative. That was rich, coming from a guy who couldn't log into the router without asking Kayla where the password was. I didn't say much, just nodded, smiled, and watched them rearrange the room I'd built from scratch. I'd spent 20 years building stability. Now they wanted vibes. Fine, let them have it. Let's see how stable their vibes are when the power flickers. Brandon started slow. First, he accidentally forgot to invite me to the change control meeting. Then 2 weeks later, my name disappeared from the weekly briefings. Suddenly, I wasn't CC'd on anything. My Jira tickets, reassigned to interns, my credentials, gutted. I tried accessing the staging pipeline. Denied. I was the senior architect and couldn't even see the testing environment. I walked into IT one morning and found Kayla, barefoot on the floor, lighting incense behind the RAID array. She looked up, all smiles. We're realigning the tech aura. You're waving fire around volatile hardware. She laughed like I told a dad joke, then went right back to humming whatever lo-fi playlist she always had on loop. There were lavender oil blotters taped to the network switch. She said it calmed down the static. And my office? Gone. I mean, physically still there, but gutted. She'd moved in while I was on site in Chicago for a firewall audit. Tossed my diagrams, my notes, my backup drive. The wall behind my desk now had a poster with gold letters. Hustle with heart. She'd put fake succulents on top of the UPS. Called them green energy. Meanwhile, I submitted a 72-page infrastructure overhaul report. Months of work. Risk assessments, licensing needs, expiration dates, bandwidth audits. Brandon replied with 3 letters. TLDR. Then added, got the gist, we'll wing it. I stared at the email for a solid minute. Wing it? With 28,000 client records and 3 international nodes? They were flying blind and high-fiving each other for it. That's when I knew. I wasn't getting pushed out. I was already out. I just hadn't stopped walking yet. So I shifted gears. First thing I did was document everything. Not on the network, locally, printed, saved, offloaded. Every license key, internal memo, patch protocol, escalation tree, and failure point. on 3 separate encrypted drives. I even backed up vendor contact sheets and contract dates. I printed the full stack config and shoved it in my glove box. No one does that, but I did. I archived everything I'd ever touched. Then I locked down the things they didn't even know existed, the failovers, the nested SSH keys, the vendor diagnostic tunnels. Quietly, I flagged every upcoming license expiration, access downgrade, and certificate renewal. Made sure the alerts would ping at full volume, not to me, but to Brandon's team. And I uploaded my resignation letter, not just once, 3 different locations, one in the HR archive, one in the cloud backup, one time-stamped and emailed to myself from a personal account. I wanted the record clear, but before I walked, I built the last piece. Not a bomb, not sabotage, a fail-safe, a passive one. It wouldn't destroy data, only destabilize systems when enough mistakes piled up. All it took was arrogance, and arrogance Brandon had in bulk. The last change I made was to my permissions. I removed my own admin clearance from the Active Directory. Just a guy, walking out the front door like nothing happened. They thought they were winning. I was just watching the tide roll in. Monday morning, 9:06 a.m., Brandon's assistant popped her head in. "He wants to see you." No subject line, no reason. Just a smirk and a wave toward the glass box they called his office. I walked in. Kayla was sitting cross-legged on the conference table, sipping something that looked like blended kale and dish soap. No shoes, AirPods in, one foot tapping to a beat nobody else could hear. Brandon didn't even look up. Just typed something on his phone and said, "We're evolving, man." That was it. I waited. He finally glanced up and did that half smile like he was about to sell me a timeshare. "Your stuff's kinda legacy." I stared at him. "Is Kayla Tier 4 certified?" Kayla blinked like I'd spoken Latin. "Is that a VPN thing?" Brandon chuckled. "It's not about certs. It's about vibe." That was his answer. That was the whole plan. He leaned back in his $2,000 chair, hands behind his head like a guy who just finished solving world hunger. "Today's your last day. No hard feelings, right?" I reached into my back pocket, pulled out my badge, and set it on the table next to Kayla's drink. "You've got 45 minutes before things start breaking." They both laughed. Brandon shot finger guns. "Appreciate the heads up, bro." I turned and walked out. No drama, no yelling, just the sound of Kayla slurping her smoothie behind me and Brandon humming whatever startup anthem they had on repeat. Elevator down, lobby quiet, sunlight through the glass panels. I stepped outside, hit the bottom step, and my phone buzzed. 1 alert, then 2, then 10, payroll error, contract access denied, staging credentials voided, all internal SharePoints red flagged, API keys not syncing, HR portal offline, licensing sync failed. My failsafe wasn't crashing anything. It was just uninviting them, one broken handoff at a time. I muted Slack. I wasn't interested in watching the panic unfold. I didn't need to see the group chats light up or hear Brandon's "we got this" messages echo through a digital dumpster fire. I was done talking. Let them debug vibes. Let Kayla wave incense over broken OAuth tunnels and misconfigured subnets. Let Brandon wing it with enterprise credentials and forgotten certificates. Me? I walked across the street to the old diner that still smelled like burned bacon and spilled coffee, found a booth, and ordered the usual. Black coffee, 2 eggs, nothing fancy. Outside the window, VectorLink's mirrored building reflected the sky like nothing was happening. Like everything inside wasn't already sliding sideways. They wanted me gone. Fine. They just never asked what would happen when I left. I stayed at the diner longer than I needed to. Booth by the window, burnt coffee in a chipped mug. Same waitress as always, name tag barely hanging on. She didn't ask why I wasn't at work, just topped off my cup and slid the creamer my way. I pulled my tablet from my bag. No SIM, no Wi-Fi, strictly offline. But it had what I needed. A snapshot of the admin logs from the previous night, plus cached access to the external health checks. Errors were already trickling in. Dallas was running hot. Frankfurt's failover hadn't pinged in 2 hours. Newark's packet loss graph looked like an EKG in full arrest. The system wasn't down, but it wasn't breathing right either. I tapped through the logs. Missed renewals, stale certificates. One by one, nodes blinking yellow. Warning signs stacking. The kind of stuff that doesn't blow up all at once. It just leaks slow and steady until the pressure caves something in. And that's when I saw it. Kayla had renamed our node dashboard. Happy Flow 2.0. Muted every critical alert. Said in Slack it was giving her toxic chakra feedback. Added a crystal ball emoji. I closed my eyes and exhaled through my nose. It wasn't sabotage. I hadn't touched a single production server. Not a file, not a script. All I'd done was stop holding it together. Like a guy letting go of a rope and watching the weight on the other end crash into the dirt. Brandon, meanwhile, was posting in the public Slack channel like he'd just conquered Rome. Cleaning out old school tech, bringing in fresh blood. Let's go. Every post had a rocket emoji, a couple hearts, one of those weird flex selfies where he's doing a peace sign in front of a whiteboard filled with buzzwords and arrows that go nowhere. I sipped the coffee, still bitter, still familiar. My dashboard, though, it was screaming in silence. Red nodes stacked like dominoes. Auth errors, API stalls, overdue maintenance scripts that had been running automatically for years. Until I'd set them to manual. They didn't notice the moment I stepped away. But the system did. You can't vibe your way through Tier 4 architecture. There's no whiteboard big enough, no Instagram filter pretty enough to substitute for knowing which server fails first when the cooling loop misfires. Kayla once called the patch scheduler that thing with the spinning icon. I had watched her click through a critical update prompt like she was dismissing a pop-up ad. They weren't stupid, not exactly. They were just sure they were right. That's always more dangerous. I kept watching. Every 30 seconds, something new. Little things. Delay here, mismatch there. Alerts pinging buried logs. Warning flags silently blinking under the layer of muted dashboards and color-coded workflow circles. Someone pinged the main admin account 3 times, then tried Brandon's credentials, then Kayla's. I leaned back and stretched my legs under the table. The waitress passed again, gave me a half-curious look, but didn't ask. Good. I didn't feel like talking. I wasn't enjoying this, not really. But I wasn't stopping it either. This wasn't revenge. This was absence. I didn't push them off the cliff. I just stepped aside and let gravity handle the rest. Let them figure out where the keys were. I'd left them all under the mat. Problem was, they didn't know how to open the door. The tablet buzzed once. Not loud, just a soft ping that cut through the diner noise like a nail on glass. I glanced down, and there it was. The one alert I knew by heart. The one I never thought I'd see again. Tripwire triggered, 12:13 p.m. My stomach tightened. Not from guilt, from recognition. That ping came from a passive protocol I'd embedded years earlier, back when VectorLink was still small enough that one bad decision could sink the whole ship. It wasn't designed to break anything. It was designed to tell me when enough foolish choices had piled up to start a chain reaction. And they had piled up. Fast. The screen flickered, then red text blinked across the cache status window. Lockdown. In 11:57:04. Then the clock started sliding backward, seconds dropping, smooth, steady, inevitable. I rubbed my jaw and whispered, well, here we are. Each mistake they'd made, mismatched credentials, license expirations, broken maintenance chains, stale keys, dead backups they didn't even know were dead, stacked like dominoes. And the tripwire didn't judge. It just counted. Once the threshold hit the line, the failsafe activated on its own. Not an explosion, just a door closing. I tapped through the logs. Kayla had tried to log into one of the Frankfurt nodes and got denied. Instead of calling someone, she snapped a selfie in front of the error screen, a big red lock icon behind her head, and posted it to Slack with, "What does this even mean, LOL? Glitch Queen." I set the tablet down and pressed my fingers to my eyes. Brandon, of course, was still in denial. A few feet below her selfie, He'd posted in the Vision Task Force channel, "Minor hiccup, just latency. We've got this." Then another, "Team, remember, energy follows belief." Someone reacted with a thumbs up. Someone else with a flame emoji. Nobody addressed the fact that half the East Coast nodes were already drifting offline. I flipped open my laptop bag, but didn't pull anything out. Didn't need to. The failsafe was already doing what it was designed to do, tightening access, pinging vendors, flagging contractual risk, pulling logs for legal review. All automatic, all above board. Everything documented and time-stamped. They wanted the keys. They didn't want the responsibility. At 12:19, my tablet flashed again, more systems sliding into restricted mode. The countdown dropped another minute. I imagine Brandon pacing the office, barking out nonsense like, "Optimize the synergy," and Kayla probably running around with a sage stick. 90% of IT work is invisible until the moment it isn't. This was that moment. I took out my phone, the personal one, not the old work-issued brick, and typed a short email. No signature, no drama. Just a forward of the clause buried in the 2015 emergency contract Harold and I had written after a nasty outage involving a fried load balancer and an intern who thought a reset button was optional. Unapproved personnel changes that affect Tier 0 architecture void indemnity protections. In plain terms, if they messed with the core without me, the board took the fall. I added 2 letters under it. RG, that was enough. They knew who that was. Then I hit send. Straight to the board distribution list. No CC, no BCC, no message body, no threat. Just the clause. The truth speaks fine on its own. The tablet buzzed again. Lockdown clock at 9 minutes and change. More alerts stacked on the side panel, trying to get my attention, even though nothing on that tablet was live. It was just echoing what the system had already started. I slid it back into my bag, stood up, dropped a 20 on the table. The waitress raised an eyebrow like she expected me to say something, but I didn't. I'd used up all my words on that company. Years of talking, years of warning, years of fixing. Enough. I walked out of the diner, pushed open the door, and stepped into the afternoon heat. Sun sharp on the pavement, air humming with traffic. Then I turned off my phone, turned off the tablet, went offline. By 6:30 that night, the legal team had melted down. Someone from internal counsel pinged the exec channel with the words, "Who authorized the personnel change to Tier 0 without risk review?" No one answered. 10 minutes later, the CTO finally said it out loud in a meeting, on record, "He built everything. He didn't break it. He just walked." That hit harder than anything I could have written myself, because it was the truth. I hadn't touched a damn thing. I hadn't even logged back in, but the system knew who built it and who didn't. Then came Kayla. Apparently someone told her to check on the diagnostics. So she walked up to the terminal labeled Archive Node Reset, saw a pink button that said Confirmation Required, and hit it. Later, when the network collapsed behind her, she broke down crying and said she thought it was for design settings. Design settings. That button triggered a full rollback protocol. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard from someone on the inside that she collapsed onto the floor, sobbing, yelling, "I didn't mean to delete anything." She didn't delete anything, but she sure kicked the last leg out from under the table. Brandon tried to play it cool, kept walking around the office in that fake CEO stride, still firing off Slack posts like he was holding it all together. Just working through some tech debt. "We've got this. Leadership is forged in chaos." He even tried blaming me, claimed I deleted documentation, said I must have erased configs on my way out. The logs ate that lie alive. Audit trail showed everything, from the moment I submitted my resignation to the last day my credentials were used. I'd backed out clean, no tampering, no edits. The system didn't just protect itself, it told the whole story in digital ink. By nightfall, the partner dashboards were dead. Vendor licensing failed across 3 product stacks. The billing API couldn't handshake. Customer portals were blank slates. And the Sydney data center, our supposed bulletproof backup, was caught in a redirect loop so tight it was sending error packets back to itself. They called me. Block number. I knew it was Chase, the board's fixer. Only guy who ever scared Brandon. He didn't leave a voicemail, didn't send a follow-up, just rang twice. I let it buzz. I didn't want revenge, never did. I wanted respect. And since they couldn't give it, I let the system do what I'd built it to do. Teach, not punish, educate. You ignore warnings long enough, the system doesn't scream. It just stops helping. At 3:12 in the morning, my email pinged once. No sender name, no subject line, just a plain message, boardroom. 9 a.m., nothing else. I didn't need more. I got up, brewed a fresh pot of black coffee, pulled out my old iPad from the drawer, and sat at the kitchen table while it booted. I showed up at 8:58 a.m., jeans, hoodie, no suit, no laptop bag. Just the same black iPad I'd used since the first Sydney deployment. The receptionist looked up like she recognized me, but didn't know what to say. She didn't need to. I walked past her, through the glass doors, past the tech lounge with the beer tap and the foosball table no one cleaned. The hallway to the boardroom was silent. No chatter. No Kayla spinning around in her chair. Just a thick, heavy tension in the air, like even the lights were nervous. Inside the boardroom, every seat was filled. Legal, product, sales, security. The CTO sat pale and silent. 2 vendor reps were on mute screens, frozen mid-frown. Harold Whitaker stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, suit still wrinkled from the red eye he had caught in from Geneva. His tie was off. His eyes were locked on the wall monitor, where 13 red nodes blinked like a countdown. He didn't turn when the door opened. Brandon did. Tried to act surprised. "Oh, look who—" Harold raised one hand. "Don't." Brandon froze, lips half open. Harold finally turned to me. "You got what you need?" I walked to the end of the table, plugged in my iPad. 4-digit code, same as it's always been. The second it connected, the screen on the wall flickered. First node, green. Second, green. Third, fourth, fifth. No one said a word. 7th, green. Harold stepped forward slowly, watching like the world was deflating in front of him. 12th, green. 13th, green. Silence. Then the main dashboard populated. Status, stable. Access, restored. Licenses, verified. Someone exhaled across the room, loud enough to be heard. Harold just stared at the screen, then looked at me. "You didn't sabotage it." I shook my head. "Didn't need to." He tilted his head slightly. I looked him in the eye. "I just stopped showing up." Brandon laughed. That nervous kind of laugh people do when they realize they're not the room's favorite anymore. "Okay, wait, let's just—" Harold didn't look at him. "You're done." Brandon blinked. "Wait, what?" "Dad, don't call me that here." Harold stepped around the table, past the projector, past the untouched conference breakfast. "You overrode protocol. You appointed a digital therapist to Tier 0 systems. You ignored every chain of command we had." "I was streamlining," Brandon barked. "We needed to evolve." "You dismantled the backbone of the company for a hashtag." Brandon pointed at me. He was hoarding control. He was holding the line. Harold's voice didn't rise, didn't need to. And when he left, everything fell. Brandon looked around, waiting for someone to back him up. No one did. He stormed out, muttering something about lawyers. Harold looked back at me. "Anything else you need?" I unplugged the iPad and slid it under my arm. "Just access." He nodded. "You've got it. Keep the title." "You sure?" I turned toward the door. I built it without one. And I walked out. Nobody stopped me this time. I didn't go far. Just down the hall, around the corner, into the smaller executive meeting room where legal and finance had holed up after the lockdown. Still smelled like burnt coffee and whiteboard markers. The second I walked in, 3 people stopped talking mid-sentence. I dropped the folder on the table. Manila, worn edges, small tear in the top corner. Nobody moved. "I'm going to say this once," I said. "Then I'm walking out." I flipped the folder open and pulled out one sheet. Yellowed from years in the drawer, signature still clear in black ink. Harold looked up from his chair. His face didn't change. but I saw it in his eyes. He remembered. Clause 7, I said, tapping it with my finger. Signed in 2015, after the Denver crash. He gave a slow nod. The emergency architecture agreement. Correct. You told me if I kept all data centers stable for 12 months straight, I'd get 5% equity per center. A younger guy in legal scoffed. That's not enforceable without board ratification. Harold cut him off without looking. It's enforceable. I signed it. Silence. Across the room, someone tapped their keyboard, pulled up the document in digital archives. You could hear them swallow when the signature matched. The boardroom door creaked open behind me. Brandon, still red in the face, jacket half on, like he'd been pacing the stairwell trying to rehearse a comeback. He froze when he saw the paper in my hand. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. He stepped forward. This is insane. This can't be real. It's real, Harold said. I remember it. Brandon's voice cracked. You gave him stock? I gave him insurance, Harold said. Turns out he earned both. Brandon looked at me like I'd just pulled a pin from a grenade. You can't own Vector Link. I don't, I said. Legally, I don't own it. I held up the paper. But I control it. Brandon opened his mouth, then choked on air, literally. Couldn't form a sentence. His jaw kept twitching like he was trying to reboot. Across the office, Kayla had locked herself in the marketing pod and was panicking over the HVAC control panel. Someone said she tried to reset a breaker labeled Ambiance Control and crashed the entire airflow system for 2 floors. People were sweating through their t-shirts while she screamed about heat vortexes. I turned back to Harold. He didn't laugh. He didn't shake his head. He just leaned forward, elbows on the table, and said, "You're on the board, permanently." I looked around the room. All those suits who ignored me for years. All the buzzword peddlers who thought tech was just magic powered by vibes and caffeine. They were quiet now. No more nodding, no more smirks. Keep my access, I said. You don't need my title. Harold didn't argue. I folded the paper, slid it back into the folder, tucked it under my arm. Then I turned, walked to the elevator, and hit the button. Doors opened. I stepped in. Nobody followed, nobody tried to stop me, and nobody said a word. Brandon was outside, pacing the curb, screaming into his phone. She can't just own it. That contract's a joke. It's not. He stopped mid-sentence, spotted me, then turned away like I was the ghost of his promotion. Kayla was leaning against her Tesla, crying into the sleeve of a silk hoodie that probably cost more than my first car. Her mascara had tracked down her cheekbones, and her shoes were off. She'd kicked them off in the heat. She kept repeating, I was just trying to help, to nobody. I didn't say a word. I just walked past them and slid into the back seat of the black SUV Harold had sent. Leather interior, cool AC. Driver in a black hat gave me a nod, like he already knew who I was and what I'd done. I leaned back, pulled out my iPad, and tapped the screen. 13 green nodes. Status, stable, no chaos, no warning signs. Just a system humming like it was supposed to. Like it always did, when it was respected. I hadn't hacked anything, didn't plant a virus, didn't write a single malicious line of code. All I did was take my hands off the wheel and let gravity do its thing. Let the logs speak. Because systems don't lie. Logs don't flatter. They don't play politics or protect egos. They don't bow to buzzwords. They just show what happened, who showed up, who broke it, and who never should have been near it to begin with. I didn't leave because I was tired. I left because they forgot who I was. I built VectorLink from the ground up. When servers overheated, I stood in the data center with a flashlight and a damn box fan. When we lost power, I rerouted traffic through a backup node on a holiday weekend with a fever. But they didn't remember that, so I let the system remind them. In the end, they didn't lose a technician, or a sysadmin, or a guy in a hoodie who kept to himself. They lost the foundation. And that foundation walked out without a speech, without a meltdown, just boots on concrete, full control in one pocket, and peace in the other. Not bad for a guy they once called too analog.